All right, so I'd like to welcome everybody to the Psychology of Learning. This is going to be your introduction to the course, just so that you know what we can expect from this semester, what you can expect from the course, and how to reach your ultimate destination of having a successful learning experience. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look at a few things. First off, I'll introduce myself. I see some familiar faces. I see some faces from my last class, so this will be a bit of a repeat for them. But I'll introduce who I am, the name, research projects that I'm currently working on, as well as the StigmaFree initiative. And then we're going to take a look at the course overview, what this course is all about, what you can expect. We'll take a look at the course procedure, things that are going to happen, what your responsibilities are. And then finally, we'll end it by hitting some syllabus highlights, just so that you know how to navigate the course so that you can plan out your semester and there aren't any surprises. All right, so let's start off with who I am. So my name is Dr. Yuricevic, and that's probably, saying the name is probably one of the hardest things in this course that you'll learn. So let's break it down into little pieces to make it a little bit easier. So it starts off with a U, and then there's a reach, and then you open up and say ah, and then finally it's a beach, and if there's any math minors in here, that little gray triangle there is a beach. So it's you, reach, beach. So let's try that on 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, very nice. Okay. So this is a very important slide in many of my classes, mostly because a lot of the things that I teach sometimes are a little bit counterintuitive. A lot of the theories that you'll come in and learn about in the psychology of learning might not be the way that you thought learning works. And that's why we're taking a course like this, to figure out what learning is all about. So if at any point in this course you have a question about something that we've seen, feel free to raise your hand during class and say, go to the slide, Dr. Yuricevic, can you go over negative reinforcement one more time? It's not what I thought it was. And it probably isn't, because negative reinforcement is one of the concepts that society has completely backwards. If you want to make a contribution, Dr. Yuricevic, I recently saw a commercial that used that same technique in order to increase liking for their product. So whatever you need to maximize your learning experience, feel free to refer to this, hands up if you need it, ask me questions if you need it. Make a contribution if you have one to make to to help us understand these concepts better, and feel free to refer to that slide for those purposes. In terms of the research that I do, just so you have a bit of a background in terms of what it is that my psychology research entails, I primarily focus on a concept known as visual language. So much like we have a spoken language, and much as we have a reading language, we also have visual language, and this area is becoming more and more important in recent years because of how visual our communications have become. So things like Instagram, things like emojis, things where pictures are replacing spoken and written word, it's important to know how are we communicating with each other, how do we process this visual language. And specifically in my research, I use an area where visual language has already been very developed and study that. So I study comic book art. So my research takes a look at comic book art and analyzes it to tell us things about how our mind works. So to give you an example of what I mean by kind of a visual language has structure to it, it has a certain grammar, it has certain lexicons. And we can see that in this next example here. So this is the cover for a Daredevil comic, and it shows the Kingpin over here in an enlarged, gigantic image on this cover, and it shows Daredevil over here off to the side. Here we have another cover by a completely different artist, and you can see that the structure of those two covers is the same. The grammar, in other words, of those two covers are the same. So they both use the enlarged villain to show that the villain is important, that the villain is powerful, that the villain is everywhere. And then also, they use this very interesting part of our visual language which is asymmetry. So you'll notice that in both of these covers, the hero is not placed in the center. So Daredevil is off to the side. Falcon and Captain America, I think, is off to the side. So that asymmetry is a way of communicating that these heroes, while they might look like us, are not exactly like us, right? So most of nature is symmetrical, right? We're symmetrical. So to place things off center, to go asymmetrical, is a way of communicating by the artist and saying, you know what, Daredevil is kind of like you, but a little bit different. So we're going to place him off to the side to communicate that idea. So some of the research that I've done to reveal how our minds work and how our minds process visual information, I took a look at how our minds combine literal information and metaphorical information to perceive motion. So here we have a picture of the Flash running, and we can perceive that the Flash is running very, very quickly, which is an amazing thing that our mind can do because that picture is not moving, right? It's a static image. If anything, we should say to ourselves, what a nice picture of a statue of the Flash. But we perceive him moving, we perceive the motion, and there are literal information that tells us that he's moving, such as the position of his arms, such as the lean of his body. You actually do that when you're running. But then there's also metaphorical information that is telling us that he's moving. So these action lines here, that's metaphorical. It doesn't happen in the real world. No matter how fast you run, you're not going to have little lines coming out the back. So we did a study where we looked at different comic book art and looked at how they combined literal information and metaphorical information. And what we found was that they combined as much literal information as they possibly could get into a picture, but they only ever usually choose one metaphor. And what that told us is that our minds can process multiple sources of literal information, and we can process metaphorical information, but just one piece. And everything after that that's added doesn't make your picture any better. And if you're interested in that work, that was published in the Comics Grid, the Journal of Comic Scholarship. This is actually a very nice open access journal that you don't need a subscription for. So if you like, you can check that out to read a little bit more of it. And it was also, a follow-up study was published in the Journal of Graphic Novels and Comics as well. Other work that I've done in this field, I took a look at how do we understand what is a metaphor and what is not a metaphor. So in English, when somebody tells you, oh, John has a heart of stone, if you understand that as a metaphor, you're going to say, oh, John is very emotionless. If you understand that literally, you're going to say, we got to get John to a hospital right now. So we have the same challenge in visual language. So this is an example of the technique of gigantic size. So Mockingbird here is drawn in gigantic size. So you look at her compared to this car, she's absolutely massive. Now, that is meant to be understood metaphorically. Mockingbird is a regular-sized human being, but what the artist is trying to convey is that she's very important, she's very powerful, she's very capable, she's central to the story. That's what they're trying to say with this gigantic size. It's metaphorical. This, on the other hand, is Galactus, drawn with gigantic size, meant to be interpreted literally. So Galactus literally is a 30-story tall cosmic entity that devours planets. So this is literal, this is metaphorical, and we studied the different information in these pictures to figure out what is it that allows us to say, yes, this should be taken literally, yes, this should be taken metaphorically, and what combination of contextual information, information about the genre, information about the character, and what about structural information, actual pieces for the of the picture, what do they tell us about, is it metaphorical or is it literal? And if you're interested in that, we had that one published in the International Journal of Comic Art. And we actually have a new one submitted, so keep your fingers crossed that it gets accepted in an APA Aesthetics, Journal of Aesthetics and Art. All right, one last one in terms of our understanding of visual language. So hopefully everybody knows what this metaphor means. If you see a light bulb above somebody's head, it means that they've just had a great idea. But that is something that's very commonplace. That's something that you'll see in a lot of different places. It's become incorporated into our visual language. But somebody had to do it first. And somebody had to spread that through somehow into our visual language, into our visual lexicon. So we wanted to find out, how does that happen? How do these things transmit? So we didn't take a look at the light bulb. We took a look at another metaphor that we identified, which is called close-up eye asymmetry. So close-up eye asymmetry, there's two components. First component, close-up. So you can see here in this top row, every image is a close-up image, just kind of the shoulders and the head, just the head, a little bit of the torso and the head. These are all close-up images. And importantly, close-up is combined with asymmetry around the eye. So here we have Storm, and not only is her electricity being depicted as asymmetrical, it's not. There's nothing about her power set that's asymmetrical, but she's only got electricity coming out of one eye, and she has her hair falling only over the one eye, not falling behind, not symmetrical. So we got two sources of asymmetry situated on the eyes. Here for Magneto, an even clearer case, we got his magnetic energy coming out of just the one eye. There's nothing asymmetrical about his powers. Here in the Harbinger comics, we have psychic powers coming out only of one eye, nothing asymmetrical about those powers. You can also do it with light and shading, here for the Rocketeer. You can also do it with the placement of objects, such as the placement of a camera or the placement of a skull. And there is no reason that skull needs to be there. You might argue that, well, the camera has to be there because that's how you use the camera, but that's not how you use the skull. That was intentionally placed over this individual's eye. And then you can also do it with the composition of an image. So here we have from the Creature comics, once again, that gigantic sized villain. We got asymmetry because of the scars on one eye, but notice also where this character is placed. It's placed to obscure just the one side, just the one eye. We have a lightning bolt over here doing the same thing. And then we got Witchblade covering up Lara Croft. She could have been in the center of the picture, but the artist said, no, we're going to place her off to the side. So what this metaphor does, what this composition does, is it accomplishes two things that are butting each other's heads. And it causes us to have a very dynamic reaction to these images. The first thing is the close-up. The close-up is communicating that these people are like you, right? You can get close to them. There's something that is very much like what you are. So we have the close-up signaling that these people are like you. The asymmetry, on the other hand, and we've already encountered this, signals that they're not like you. There's something different about them, something alien about them. So in this one image, you have that tension between, oh, they're like me, but they're not like me. So it's that very kind of dynamic play in our minds that can be very, very effective. And this is used in comic book art. This is also used in movies as well. So this is Cable from Deadpool 2. And he is the king of asymmetry. He's got asymmetry everywhere. So he's got scars on his eyes. He's got power coming out of one eye only. And we were basically able to take a look at this visual metaphor and trace it back to one event, one instance, one piece of art that was the crystallizing experience from which this metaphor sprang and just became part of this visual lexicon. And that one piece of art actually came from David Bowie, and it was his cover to Aladdin Sane. So this cover to Aladdin Sane uses close-up eye asymmetry, and basically using some kind of like interdisciplinary detective work, we were able to draw on developmental studies and art development studies, and we were able to determine that when the point in your life when you're most susceptible to artistic influences, this kind of like critical period is between 9 and 13 years old. And during that time, one image can have a crystallizing experience and basically get embedded into your artistic development for years to come. Put that together with the fact that artists are most prolific in their late 20s, early 30s is usually when they start to do their most important work. And what we found was that children who were 9 to 13 years old when this came out became comic book artists in the 90s that exploded in popularity. And if you look at their use of close-up eye asymmetry, they use it way more than anybody else who was born at different times. So we traced it back to this one event. To my knowledge, it's the only time that has ever been done. And if you want to read more about that, once again in the comics grid, you can access that article. All right, so that's my research. A couple more things about me and then stop talking about me. I do have a couple of social media accounts. So I have Apple Insane. I post more to Twitter than I do to Instagram. So if you want to see some of the work that we've been doing or some of the work that's done in this area, you can follow my account. You can also look up the hashtag Comic Book Scientist. Is where that's the hashtag that I use for a lot of my research. My lab likes to use the hashtag Too Hard for Soft Science, so you can see what some of my students have been doing by following that hashtag as well. Just to kind of see some of the latest stuff that we've been working on, some of the latest stuff that my students have been publishing. All right, a few more things to be aware of. I have a YouTube channel. I want to make you aware of this because I do record my lectures when I give them. So my laptop is recording this right now, and then I post them on YouTube. So this is an additional kind of bonus service that I like to provide for my students that can allow you to review some of the things that we have gone over in a lecture. If for any reason you can't make it to class that day, you're not going to fall behind. You can just get up on YouTube. I usually post it within 24 hours. You can just go up on YouTube and catch up on the day's events. And then even if you want to work forward, let's say that you know that, oh man, October, the third week in October, I got so many papers in these other classes, I don't want to have any homework due, in other classes in psychology of learning during that third week of October. If you want to work ahead to get a leap on some things, you can actually access, as for example right there, previous semesters of this course. So I do tweak my course. You will notice differences, but the basics of learning have not changed in terms of what we know for a while. So you can use this in any way. I will post that link up in Canvas as well. Just want you to be aware of that so that you can maximize your learning outcomes in this course. So for instance, what I'm saying right now will be up on my 2019 channel within 24 hours of this class. All right, last thing about me has to do with the StigmaFree initiative. So the National Alliance on Mental Illness, they have this initiative called StigmaFree, and this is a drive that they have, a program that they are having to encourage people to get out there and talk about mental illness, to basically remove the stigma that our society has on mental illness. So if you were to fall down outside and break your arm, and you're walking around with a broken arm, and somebody comes up to you and says, hey, did you break your arm? Do you need help? None of us are going to say, no, my arm's not broken, I'm fine, don't worry about it, it'll be better tomorrow, I'm okay. No, you'll be like, yes, please help me, I need to go to the doctor, I have a broken arm. Mental illness is completely different. People are in denial, there's a stigma to it, we hide it, and that prevents people from getting the help that they need because of these illnesses. So as part of the StigmaFree initiative, at the beginning of each of my classes, I just like to let everybody know that I do battle with mental illness. I have been diagnosed with depression. It is something that I work on just about every single day to make sure that I keep progressing and keep getting better. But one of the other things that I like to do at this point is to just kind of give you a sort of glimpse into what it's like, and to let anybody know who might be dealing with this that there are things that you can do. There is light at the end of the tunnel. You can be victorious over your mental illness. So this is a timeline. So it starts here in fall 2010. That's when I started working here at IUSB. And right about here in spring, I was diagnosed with depression. So I wish I could tell you that I just decided enough is enough. I have to go seek professional help. But that just kind of shows you the stigma that is attached to this, because I was still in denial. I just thought I was being lazy, and I thought I could just snap myself out of it. And it wasn't until my wife talked to me and said, you gotta go get help. You need to talk to somebody. That I finally went, and I'm glad that she did, because I would love to tell you that I developed depression in spring of 2012. but that's not true. I was dealing with it for years before. And that's why we're trying to lift this stigma, so people don't deal with it for years. People just say, oh man, I think I might be depressed. Let me get some help. So I was placed on prescription medication. I did cognitive behavioral therapy. And my final prescription was filled about a year later. And I wish I could tell you that that was it. I was done. I was depression-free. But that's not the way the mental illness works. And I'm still in recovery. It's kind of like a 2 steps forward, 1 step back thing. But it's continually getting better. And importantly, you need to know that it can get better. So the last thing I'll show here is how much better this can get. So when you, for professors at a university, one of the things that they look at to see how successful you are, how productive are you, how good are you at your job, what they do is they look at your publications, right? How many articles have you put out? How much research have you published in a professional journal? So when I was in the thick of it, when I was at my worst, I was able to squeeze out 1 publication, right? So since starting at IUSB, 2 years later, I was able to get 1 publication. That's not a lot, right? That's what depression can do for you. Compare that to the period during my recovery in spring of 2016. So first off, it might take a while. It might, but it's better to take the time, because in spring of 2016, I had 2 publications. In the fall of 2016, that's right, I had another publication. In spring of 2017, like the floodgates were open. 5 publications in that time. We got to go into the more recent past here. Another publication in spring of 2018. And I got 1 more published 2019, 3 more coming in 2019. So you can see this is after treatment, this is before treatment. Huge, huge difference. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. Treatment works, you do get better, things can get better. So as my last sort of public service announcement for the Stigma-Free Initiative, I just want to let you know that if you think you're suffering from depression, and that's all that you need, not that you know. Even if you suspect it, if you just think it, go get help. Because it is a myth that you can beat this on your own. It's a myth that you can, get out of this on your own. So again, think about that broken arm, right? You never go to somebody with a broken arm and say, you know what, just look at your broken arm in a positive light. Maybe just really try to heal your broken arm. Let's see if that works. No, you say, go get help. Go to a doctor. And I'm telling you, go to a doctor. So if you think that you might be suffering from a mental illness, or if you think that your friend might be suffering from a mental illness, help them to get help as well. And if you don't know where to start, you can come knock on my door. And I'm not a clinical psychologist, but I will help you. I've been through it. I'll point you in the right direction. I'll get you into the right contact people. But definitely just know you cannot do this alone. That myth of the heroic individual just overcoming everything does not apply to mental illness. But get the help that you need, and all of a sudden this turns into this. All right, course overview. What is this course all about? What are we going to be doing here? So this course is going to be about the principles of human and animal learning. So this is going to be about the basic principles of how we learn. So it's going to rely a lot on animal research. And one of the things to kind of know is that, and we'll talk about this a bit when we talk about animal models, but the ways that animals learn are basically the ways that we learn as well. So we're going to talk a lot about rats and pigeons and dogs, because knowledge of those studies will give us insight into how humans actually learn as well. So back to the non-video section. So learning objectives that we're going to go over in this course. You're going to learn how to interpret rates of behavior from a cumulative frequency graph. So you'll learn all about how to read these cumulative frequency graphs to identify types of behaviors. You will identify the US, UR, NS, CS, CS, CR, CS1, CS2, and CR in classical conditioning. Now, two things about this. If you ever go to a psychology of learning conference, that's how they talk. So you'll hear discussions where they're like, well, what was your CR? And they'll be like, oh, my CR was this, well, my CS was this, and the US was this. Well, did you pair that with an NS? No, not an NS, a CS1. That's how they talk. We're not there yet. I'm not even there yet. So what I want you to do when you read through your textbook, when you read through your questions, when you do your homework, anytime you see one of these abbreviations, do not read them as abbreviations. Read them full out. And get into that habit. Because honestly, US, UR, NS, CS is meaningless. But unconditioned stimulus, unconditioned response, neutral stimulus, that makes sense to our human brains. So whenever you're reading your textbook, day one, get into that habit because your textbooks will use the abbreviations. They'll say it first, they'll be like neutral stimulus, and then in brackets, NS, and then they'll use NS the rest of the way through. Don't read it in your mind as NS. Get into the habit of every single time saying neutral stimulus, because then when you get to an exam question, for example, you won't have to think, well, what does NS mean? It'll be your 100th time reading it as neutral stimulus, so that'll really help you. So we are going to have tons of abbreviations. Once again, we got these ones here. Read them out. All right, so discriminative stimulus for reinforcement, discriminative stimulus for punishment, discriminative stimulus for extinction, reinforcer, punisher. Read those out rather than SP, SR, because SP, SR is SP is salt and pepper. It's not going to make any sense to you. So just as a foreshadowing, do get into that habit. So we're going to learn about classical conditioning. We're going to learn about operating conditioning. These are two of the biggest areas of learning. We're going to be able to identify the four basic contingencies. You're going to learn that what society thinks is negative reinforcement is not negative reinforcement. And you're going to notice it everywhere. I was watching the DreamWorks Trolls, The Beat Goes On, with my daughter just the other day. And Poppy got negative reinforcement completely wrong. So you'll notice that it's not something that most people know about. You're going to be able to identify the four basic intermittent schedules. You're going to be able to identify them in your own life, and you're going to know which schedules you're on. You're going to know how to predict what's a reinforcer based on the response deprivation hypothesis. So there's a lot of things. Oh, we're not doing Sniffy the Rat. Sorry, I should have deleted that. There's a lot of things you're going to be able to learn about how we learn. All right, so the course procedure. I run this course like I run all my other courses. I run it like a lab meeting. What that means is that all course content is open to ideas and discussions. So this is one of the courses that I teach that I really like because learning is everywhere, right? We're always learning, whether we're in a classroom explicitly learning or whether we're in a social situation and we're just learning because of natural contingencies. So if you've ever been in a social situation and you've made a faux pas, you said something that you shouldn't have, you tell yourself, well, I'm never going to say that again. Why? We'll find out why, right? It's all because of the kind of learning contingencies. So you're going to have ideas about this, you're going to have contributions to make, and that's awesome. Let me know about it. We're going to have time in each class. Just raise your hand, go back to that slide, Dr. Yudicevich. I just saw this commercial the other day. Is that an example of what you're talking about, Dr. Yudicevich? I was watching Ghostbusters. Is that negative reinforcement? No, it's not. Dr. Yudicevich, let us know about, what do you think about this? Or, I have this question. So raise your hand. I'm a firm believer of that old idiom. There are no bad questions. There's only ones that aren't asked. There's also no bad ideas, but there are wrong ideas, and you're here because you probably have wrong ideas about learning. You probably think learning might work in this particular way, and you're going to find out it works in maybe a completely different way. So that's fine. That's how we progress. That's how we grow. But just get ready for it. It might be completely counterintuitive, some of the ideas that we encounter, and that's fine. If you need to raise your hand to get past that counterintuitiveness, if it confuses you because you thought it was going to be something else, raise your hand, let me know. We'll make sure that you're on the right track. And just so that you know, I completely understand it because that's how science works. My experiments almost never go the way that I think they're going to go, because that's why we do the experiments, to figure out what's going to happen. So if you're sitting there thinking, oh no, I'm going to look foolish if I ask the question, just know my career is looking foolish for a living, so I understand, and no judgment from this end. All right, contact and Canvas. So that's my office. It's just upstairs. There's my office hours. So it is almost immediately after class, so our class ends at 12:45. I just need half an hour to kind of decompress and get some food into myself. So first office hour is at 1:15, and that goes for 1 hour. And then the second office hour is at 4 o'clock, and that goes for 1 hour. So I like having them on the days that you have classes because you're here. And if you need any questions, just drop by, no appointment necessary, knock on the door, and I will assist you in whatever way I can. There's my phone number. Don't use it. I don't. So don't use it as well. Don't leave me a message. I still got that blinking red light from like 2017. So that's not the way to get into contact with me. The way to get into contact with me is through Canvas messages. So do not use my official email. I do not check that as often as I probably should. But I do commit to checking Canvas messages once a day. So my turnaround time on that is about, is under 24 hours. And it helps me keep just all my courses organized and everything. So if you contact me through Canvas messages, I will try to get back to you within a day. If you contact me through email, it might get lost. So please don't do that. Use Canvas messages to contact me. And also on the topic of Canvas, you do have access to a lot of resources through Canvas, including the lecture slides. So these slides that we're looking at right now, I'll upload them to the files folder in Canvas. So you can download those to help you take your notes. You can know that they're there for you, afterwards. If you have laptops, feel free to open them up and follow along. It's available there for you in Canvas. All right, other things, required text and resources. So we're going to be using a textbook, an online textbook. It's an e-text homework solution. And it's part of the IU e-text initiative. So you should have paid for it with your tuition. It should already have been bought for you. I just want to let you know that we are currently experiencing some access issues with it. So I don't have this link live right now because I wanted to make this announcement before people did something that might not be, they might not be able to be reversed. So I will make this live after this course, so sometimes later today I will go and I will publish this. So this is the way that eventually you're going to be able to access your textbook, your homework, your pre-test, your post-test, all of those things. You can find it, it's going to be either under home or modules, just check either one of those. And that's the way that you're going to link to the textbook. So there's no physical textbook, it's all online. However, there's something wrong. We haven't been able to set it up yet correctly. I'm still talking to the people at MindTab, at Cengage, just to make sure that it works correctly. The course is set up. It's all ready to go, but your kind of access through Canvas is not set up right now. So the reason I didn't do it live is because I don't want anybody purchasing an access code for this. So you should have already paid this as part of your tuition. So I didn't want you to click on the link and then it says, oh, you need an access code. That's what we're working on right now. You should have direct access. So I made this announcement as well online. Just want to make sure that everybody knows it. Don't buy anything. We're still working on it. So if you click on it, it will take you to a place that says, oh, how would you like to purchase your access code? Or here are your options for purchasing an access code. Don't buy it yet. Hopefully don't buy it at all because it's supposed to already be paid for. So we're working on that and I'll let you know when we get it resolved. However, I don't want to place this course on hold. I do want everybody to be able to, start up and progress on this. So for that, I just want to make everybody aware that the link that I'm going to give you will take you to this registration where it goes, you will need to pay for access using one of these options below. Do not pay, we're still working on it. But you can do it online, you can do it at a bookstore. This is what you're going to want. You're going to want that free trial. So as part of this course, they give you a 2-week, basically free trial. And that's what you want to use. So you're going to have access, you're going to have full access. You're going to get in there, you're going to be able to start reading the textbook, start doing some of the homework assignments, start doing the pre-tests and things like that. But I just want to make sure that nobody was paying extra money because, again, we're trying to resolve that issue. You should already have access. So when the link goes live, click on it, start poking around, start taking a look at the MindTap environment, but do it with this free trial 2-week period. And I'm hoping within the next day we'll have this resolved. And I'm going to be storming Cengage if they don't have it resolved in 2 weeks for sure. But just so that you don't, I don't want to heap unnecessary expenses on top of your bottom line. Okay. So once again, free trial. Everybody, make sure that you use them. Okay. So now let's talk about performance evaluation. So how are we going to track your progress in this course? How are we going to learn a lot of the things that we're doing in this course as well? So the first thing I want to make you aware of is the pre-tests. So in my courses I use pre-tests. The reason I use pre-tests is because it has been experimentally shown over and over and over again that when students try to learn the material on their own at first, struggle with it on their own, their learning outcomes are greatly increased. So that's the reason that I use pre-tests. So I've read the course evaluations. I know they're not your favorite thing, in the world to do, but they work and they're highly, highly effective. They worked in just about every course I've used them in. So there are pre-tests. So I expect you to read the chapter. There's going to be 15 short, typically 15 short tests covering the assigned readings, kind of like multiple choice questions. So as you read along, just go through the pre-tests. It's there to kind of familiarize you with the material. And I will automatically drop your lowest 2 pre-test marks. So we got 14. I'll drop the lowest 2 automatically. So again, it's just a way to maximize your learning outcomes by coming to class prepared, by struggling a little bit with the material, wrestling with it a bit. It's just been shown to have huge, huge benefits in your ability to learn the material. Yep.
Are there any time limits for the pre-test?
No. So that's another thing with the pre-test. We'll go into more detail on those next class, and I'll kind of show you the settings that I have for the pre-test. But there's also unlimited attempts as well. So this is this course. One of the first things that first assignments that you're going to have, first pre-test that you're going to have, is you're going to watch a video. And this video is on the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. It's on the difference between thinking that you're the way that you are versus thinking that you can get better. We're all trying to think that we can get better, but in our society, a lot of people like to have or have been told about that fixed mindset. So if you've ever said to yourself, I just came from stats, and one of the things I always hear from students is, well, I'm not a math person. That's a fixed mindset. If you've ever said that of yourself, or I'm just not this type of a person, that's a fixed mindset. You basically said, I'm in this box and I'm not getting out. I'm not a math person, and there's no changing that. If on the other hand you say, well, I currently struggle with math, that means that currently I'm like that, but it leaves the potential that one day you might be awesome at math. So the pre-test and most of this course is going to be designed around that type of an idea. So the pre-test you can take, there's an unlimited number of times you can take it. There's unlimited time limits on the pre-test as well. There's going to be hints for the pre-test. So if you get it wrong the first time, you go back and try it again. They'll prompt you with some hints. It's open book. So it really is this idea that I don't expect you to know it, but I do expect you to develop it and grow it and learn those skills. So much of this course is going to be designed around that idea, that if you get it wrong, it's not that you don't know it, it's just you don't know it yet. So try it again. let's do it one more time. So I will go over the details in next class about the pretest, but there is unlimited attempts for those pretests. All right, so importantly, due dates. Pretests are designed to get you ready for class. So they will not work after the class. They're not something that you can complete after the due date. So please bear that in mind. Pretests can now be completed after the due dates. All of the assignments, all of the pretests are available right now. So you can work ahead as much as you like. So if you have a tough time in your schedule coming up, feel free to work ahead a little bit and get a jump on things. But just note that after the pretest deadline is passed, you cannot complete those pretests for points. This is the first time I'm using this particular MindTap solution, so I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but that is one thing that I do know: you can't complete it after the due date. And I know that some of you might miss the due dates, and email me and say, could you please reopen the pretest? Can I do it after the due date? And I will copy and paste from a little file that I have. I'm sorry, but that cannot be done. So just be aware of it. It's going to be very apparent when the due dates are. So please maximize your points for your effort in this course and pick up those points where you can. All right. Post-test. So keeping with this idea of getting better and better, you have your pretest. Then after we meet in class, after we go through the chapter, after you've done done the homework assignment, then you're going to have a post-test. And the post-test is a nice way of seeing how far you've come and what have you developed, and also a nice way of identifying any little thing that you might still be missing, possibly for the exam. So there's going to be post-tests. The post-tests are going to have the same structure as the pre-test. So what you did in the pretest, the same types of questions will be on the post-test, and hopefully you'll be able to see that kind of progression through. It might take you 8, 9 attempts on the pretest before you get all the questions right. It might only take you 1 attempt on the post-test, right? That's growth. That's what we're trying to get here. So the post-test you can also take multiple times. And again, we'll go through those details next class just to make sure that everybody knows the kind of settings for these. Was that your question?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, but once again, for the post-test, watch out for those due dates. Again, this is an online solution, graded when that deadline passes. All right, homework. So this is not going to be that homework intensive of a course. There's 6% for homework. There's 6 homework assignments. These are going to be short videos followed by questionnaires that will delve a little bit deeper into certain aspects of the chapters that we're looking at. So they'll take a look at phobias a little bit more in depth. They'll take a look at classical conditioning a little bit more in depth. We'll learn about a Skinner box a little bit more in depth. So those are the homework assignments to give you better understanding of the course concepts. They're pretty straightforward. Again, make sure that you get those done. Make sure that you get them done by the due dates. All right. So that's all pretty straightforward. That's probably something that you've encountered before. This next one, though, might be new to you, and it is the chapter mastery training. So the chapter mastery training is going to be your biggest kind of single portion of your final grade. So you can see here that it's 30%, right? So there are 12 chapter mastery training units, and this is going to account for 30% of your final grade. What chapter mastery training is it is an online interactive study guide that will help you learn the material. So it will start off with a bunch of learning objectives, and then it will analyze your performance and basically say, all right, this is what you've learned, we're good with that. This is what you still have to work on. So let's continue to work on this. And then as you master the mastery objectives, as you master those, you'll get closer and closer and closer to 100% completion. And it is just a very effective way. I've used it in 1 semester. I really liked it. It's a very effective way to help you to learn this material, to practice it, so that you can get better and better. And again, it's interactive, and it'll identify what you need more work on and what you've already accomplished. The biggest thing that I want to point out is that learning requires distributed sessions. So what distributed learning is, it's learning in little pieces over a certain amount of time rather than cramming it all in, for example, right before the exam. So study after study after study has shown that if you study a little bit on a Monday, and then a little bit more on a Tuesday, and a little bit more on a Wednesday, and a little bit more on a Thursday, and then finalize it on a Friday, that is way better, that distributed practice, than just spending 3 hours studying on a Friday. So this mastery training takes that idea and enforces it. So be very aware that when you go to the mastery training, you're going to be given a certain unit to master. And once that is done, you will be locked out of mastery training. You will not be able to access it for a certain amount of time. And there's an algorithm that kind of determines that, and it'll tell you, come back in 5 hours, and you can go on to the next step. Come back in this amount of time, and you can go on to the next step. It's enforced distributed practice. So this is just something that I want you to be aware of because, as much as I was told when I was a student, yeah, do distributed practice. I crammed for exams, I'm sure like many of you have. So it's a natural tendency, but again, we want to maximize our benefits and our outcomes in this. So I want you to be aware that this is going to be restricted distributed practice. So once you get access and we start chapter 1, that's when you should start chapter 1 mastery training. And once you get access and we start chapter 2, start chapter 2 mastery training. Start it as early as you can because that's going to help you, number one, get the most out of this course. Number two, reach 100% mastery training. Because again, I got those emails where the exam was on a Tuesday, and on Monday they said, well, I started my mastery training, but I can't finish it, I'm locked out. I don't want that to happen, to any of you. So again, get on top of it, do it a little bit, every single day. It'll tell you when you can come back, but just be aware that it cannot be completed in one sitting. It needs to be completed across, numerous sessions. All right, exams. Exams are going to account for 34% of your final grade. There are 4 exams. They're going to cover the specific chapters that we're going to have in those different sections. They are non-cumulative. So the final exam is not on the whole year. The final exam is on the final quarter of this semester. Exam 3 is on the 3rd quarter of this semester. Exam 1 is on the 1st quarter. So they're not cumulative, but there are going to be 4 of them. If they're going to be done in class, if you need to miss an exam, all that I ask is 2 things. Number 1, the reason that you miss it has to be beyond your control. And number 2, and this is the more important one, it has to be documented. So I'm very flexible on beyond your control. Right? So I know that life happens and sometimes you can't make it to an exam. So I've had students whose child developed a fever and they couldn't take him to daycare. If your tire, goes flat that morning, or your car breaks down. If your boss sends you an email and says, oh yeah, we're having a mandatory company retreat for team building, and it just happens to fall on your exam day. All of those things are fine, beyond your control. So I'm very understanding about beyond your control, but I absolutely have to enforce documented. So if your child is running a fever and you can't take them to the daycare, if you take them to the doctor, get me a doctor's note. If you can't go to or if you're not going to the doctor, get your daycare to send me an email or forward me their policy. If your car breaks down, get me the repair bill, get me the tow truck. If your boss calls you in for that mandatory team building retreat, just forward me that email, with the dates on it. So I'm very flexible in terms of what is beyond your control, but just bear in mind I absolutely need documented. So if you're too sick to write the exam, go to the Health and Wellness Center get yourself a doctor's note. I just need some sort of documentation for that. So if you do miss an exam, you do need to write up your makeup exam. That is done through the psychology lab. So just check the syllabus for their contact information, set a time with them, and you can write your makeup exam. All right, and the last part of your performance evaluation, class attendance. So I do have my lectures up. They will be online on YouTube. But what I found one semester was that students sometimes think that that means that they no longer have to show up to class and they can do the entire course just by watching the online lectures. And what I find, YouTube is not set up for that. So invariably what happens is they put it off until it's way too late. They try to watch all the videos in a single day, and none of it gets in, none of it registers, and they end up doing very, very poorly in the course. So I don't want that to happen to anybody here. And if you think it might not happen to you, but you have more than 3 things in your Netflix watch queue, trust me, it will happen to you. All right? So if you go to your watch list and it's more than a page, you're the kind of person that says, oh, I'm going to do this, but not right now, eventually. And I can say that because I actually reached the limit on my Netflix queue where they're like, no, you can't add this until you delete some stuff. So I'm right there with you, okay? That's why I have this 10% for class attendance. Okay, so it's going to happen every once in a while. You're going to miss a class, watch a YouTube video, that's what it's for. It's there for review. It's not there to replace this. So that's why I have 10%. You've already earned part of that credit today when you signed in, so that's how I track it. So if you haven't signed in already, I'll find out where it is by the end of class, and you can sign in then. But just be aware that that's the reason that I do this, so that the YouTube channel, the online lectures, don't get used in the wrong way. All right, so a few other things. Missed deadlines, classes, again, if it's beyond your control and documented, I will, where'd it go? If it's beyond your control and documented, I will account for that, okay? So if, a pretest was due, but you were in bed with the flu and you just couldn't do it, again, doctor's note, I'll take it off your grade, we won't count that against you. But it needs to be, once again, documented. There it is. All right. Grading breakdown. So there's a grading breakdown. Pretty standard stuff that you've probably seen in other courses. What you might not have seen in other courses is this right here. So we got your 12 best out of 14 pre-tests, this worth 10%. Your 12 post-tests worth 10%. Your homework assignments, 6%. Chapter mastery training, that's the big one, 30% there. But then this is a little different. This is what I like to do in my classes. Your exams are graded on a sliding scale depending upon how well you did on that particular exam. So your best exam is going to be worth the most. It's going to be worth 12% of your final grade. Your second best exam is going to be worth 10. Your third best is worth 7%. Your fourth best exam is going to be worth only 5% of your grade. And I like to do this. I call this built-in forgiveness. And the reason that I do this is because in this course, we're going to be looking at different areas of learning. Learning is a big area, right? So we're going to spend a lot of time on classical conditioning. And then we're going to spend a lot of time on operational learning. And then we're going to spend time on observational learning. And hopefully, everything will make sense to you. Hopefully, at the end of every lecture, you'll be like, wow, I never knew that about operational learning. Totally makes sense. I can totally identify contingencies. That's amazing. But I understand that maybe that won't happen, and you might struggle with one particular area of this course while you're acing everything else. So that's why I like to do this, because let's say that operational learning just doesn't make sense to you. By the time the exam comes, you're still confused, you're still not, on top of it. You still need to, grow a little bit in your understanding of operational learning. But this is a course, we have exams on certain dates. If that happens, don't worry, it's only going to be worth 5% of your final grade. So what this means is that even if you get 40% on an exam, which I don't anticipate, but let's say that you get 40% on an exam, that's going to be your worst exam that means that you only get 2% out of this 5%. That means you can still get an A+. All right, so it's got that forgiveness built in. So if you do poorly on an exam, don't panic. Your semester's not over. Your grade is not, hasn't tanked. Take it for the information that it gives you. Come to me during an office hour. We'll go over the concepts that you might have missed, just to make sure that your learning outcomes are maximized. But again, remember the built-in forgiveness. All right, in terms of electronic devices, you can read through the syllabus for my policies on that. Feel free to have your cell phones out to record lectures. Have your laptops out if that helps you. The only thing that I ask is that if you need to communicate, just take it outside. I'm completely understanding for that. You don't even have to put your hand up or anything. If you get a text and it says, issue at daycare, call now. Just pick it up, go outside, take care of your business. I'm totally fine with that. Catch up on what you missed on the YouTube channel, but please don't text or communicate via cell phone while you're in class. Syllabus for accommodations. So if you need accommodations, there's syllabus policies for that. So religious observances, check the dates. If there's conflict with your religious beliefs, let me know and we'll get you the accommodations. If you're a student with disabilities, once again, please make me aware of that. And then also information for your responsibilities as a student in this course, what to do for campus emergencies, and issues for sexual misconduct. So we're almost done, just a couple more things. Number one, I just want to make sure everybody is aware of this. So in terms of accreditation, this course, while it does count towards the IUABA certificate, so this is the behavior analysis certificate that we offer here, and if you want more information about that, Dr. Ritchie is the one that oversees that particular program. This course does count towards that certificate, but it does not count towards your BACB certification. So Behavior Analysis Certification Board, it doesn't count towards your certification. So if this is the first time you're hearing about this organization, then don't worry because it doesn't apply to you. But if you took this course saying, oh yeah, this is going to count towards my hours towards certification, I just want you to know that it does not, just so that you're fully aware of what's going on. All right, and the last thing we're going to do right now is we're going to take a look at the class schedule real quick so that you just are fully aware of how to navigate the syllabus. So the first thing to know, the syllabus is available on Canvas, and it has a lot of what we've covered so far today. There we go. So it's got a lot of what we've covered so far today. So let's zoom down to the course schedule, and we'll just let you know how to navigate that. All right. So you'll see that we got the dates. We got the, there we go. So we got the dates there, and we have what I have for the required readings, and then what we're going to cover. So just kind of ease us into this. We're not doing the pre-testing for Chapter 1. We will have a pre-test for Chapter 1, but it'll happen after we cover Chapter 1. So is it really a pre-test? I don't know. You let me know. But anyways, the most important things that you'll see here are the things in red. So that lets you know when stuff is due. So for example, by September 2nd at 11:59 p.m. So almost all of our assignments, all of our pre-test, post-test, and homeworks are due by midnight the day before we meet for class. So that's just to make sure that we get it done so that we're not doing it in the morning and rushing to class and, so that we can maximize our consolidation of the information with a good night's sleep. So just be aware of that. It's due midnight the day before. So due, for example, September 2nd by midnight. We have the following pre-tests that are there. So getting started, this is your kind of introduction video to how to use MindTap. So it's just a sort of welcome to MindTap. This is some of the features. We also have the mindset, how can you fulfill your potential by Carol Dweck video. That's available in Canvas. So that's a Canvas quiz that you can access. And then these ones here, I'm new to MindTap, and I was kind of surprised that they don't allow you to rename their assignments. So this chapter 1, this due chapter 1 quiz, that's your pretest. So again, it's listed under pretest. This is in the MindTap. So not for next class, but by next week, just do that chapter 1 quiz, read through chapter 1, and we'll get started with that. So you'll see that chapter 2, the pretest is due for September 4th at midnight. And then the post-test for chapter 1 is also due at that time. So we're going to kind of have this, once we get into the semester, we're going to have this pattern of you do the pretest, we take a look at the chapter, you do the pretest for the next chapter, and that gives you time to finish the homework so that you can do the post-test for that previous chapter. So there's going to be a little bit of overlap. We'll see how that goes. But just so that you know, it does clearly let you know when these things are due. So let me scroll down a little bit more. It'll identify what is homework and what is pretest. So once again, we got the pretest, due chapter 3. We got homework, complete the chapter 2 media quiz. And they're named this because that's how they appear in MindTap. So you will see complete chapter 2 media quiz correlation. That's going to be the link that you see in your MindTap. And that also brings me to your post-tests, just so that you're aware. They are called copy of due chapter 2 quiz. So what I've done for the post-tests is I've literally just taken your pre-test and I've copied them as your post-test. And some of the questions, just so you're aware, some of the questions might be exactly the same. But other ones are what they call algorithmic questions. And these are ones where the structure of the question is the same, but the actual words are different. So if you have a question on positive reinforcement, and it says something like, Johnny studied really hard for his test. And when he got an A, his mom said, good job. What is that an example of? Is it positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement? It's positive reinforcement. You might see that on the pre-test. On the post-test, you might see something like, Sally practiced shooting a basketball. She got a basket, and her dad said, hey, great job. What is that an example of? So it's basically the same type of question, but they have these algorithmic questions. We'll update it. So you'll get those updated ones on your post-test. But your post-tests, again, because I can't rename them, they're called copy of due chapter 2 quizzes. So that's what you want to keep your eye out for. Take a look at your syllabus. Know when your things are due. Your mastery trainings, they are going to be due before the exams. So we're not going to have your mastery training for chapter 1 due at the end of when we're done covering chapter 1. They are going to be due for the purposes that they're made, which is to get you ready for that exam. So you'll notice that the exam number 1 is on September 17th. And due midnight the day before, you have your 3 mastery trainings. So again, check a look at your deadlines, take a look at your due dates, make sure that you're aware of those, plan out your semester accordingly, and know, just one more time, one more time today, but I'll mention it again in future classes, your mastery training has to be spread across multiple days. It cannot be done in a single sitting. So while it is due on September 16th, if you started on September 16th, you're going to get a small portion of it completed. And you'll get points for that small portion completed, but if you want to get to 100% completion, for example, for Chapter 1 Mastery, you might as well start it either today, tomorrow, whenever you start Chapter 1, and then check the dates and work through it, because again, it has that enforced distributed practice. All right, so I think that is what I wanted to cover for today. Are there any questions before we adjourn for the day? Yep.
For like the soccer exams, I'm on the soccer team, and so like with my coach, we're just going to know if I have to miss class for something.
Yeah, that's cool. So that would be a perfect example of beyond your control. And I just need some sort of documentation, so an email or whatever
Like if it's
would work.
schedule or something.
Yeah, schedule would be good as well. Any other questions?
When do you think MindTap will be available? Are we just waiting to find out?
So MindTap is available right now.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm going to go, actually, let me clarify that. I'm going to make the link live probably by the end of today. Depends how busy my office hours are, but by the end of the day, that little link where you can go to MindTap will be available. Do the 2-week free trial for now, just so we can all get going, so we can all get started. And I'm working with Cengage to make sure that what we pay for is delivered.
Okay.
All right. All right. So I'll see you all next time.